gentlemen, I know you're going to be entertained, challenged and frightened in equal measure. Please put your hands together for Simon Finch.
Thank you. Big stage. Hello? 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 All righty, let's go for rowdy. That would be canny, I think. What are we going to do first? Firstly, I should say is thank you to Philip Belcher, our multimedia developer, and Alex Moss, our student at Northern Grid, where I work, because they're the two guys that have put together the mess that was my ideas for the last 3 months. And it was finished yesterday lunchtime. When I say finished yesterday lunchtime, we then had to change the spelling errors, such as the British education system. And a couple of sandwiches later, we had it. So no one will be more surprised than I about what comes up next at each time I change the slides. So first of all then, the title is of this talk isn't as I sent to Steve when he asked for an outline, because I use lots of posh words because I thought that's what the university would like. But really what I meant was that something better change, and that is going to be the theme of what we're talking about. So as a kind of defense or a background, or so that you know, I was a secondary teacher for 15 years in an inner city school in Newcastle, which in those days we called rough. In these days we would call challenging. And it had, for those few of you in here who will remember, it had what was known as a special priority allowance, which was £250 that teachers were paid in addition to their salary. I thought it was danger money. Apparently it was for more clothes, given the things that were going to be happening to you. And then I taught in Canada for a year at high school, and then I was a member of the advisory team in Durham. I then worked for a commercial company for a couple of years, training teachers and working with teachers, and I now work for Northern Grid, which is an organisation which is owned entirely by 7 local authorities. What that means then is that unlike many people in this room and in this institution and in this country, I have been in over 1,000 schools. I have worked with hundreds of school leadership teams. I have delivered workshops and spoken at conferences, and I'm as likely to do that as I am to be teaching children in primary schools or secondary schools or PRUs or even right up to sixth form 2. So that is not my credentials, but tells you how I came to the place where I am now and why I'm about to tell you the things that I think are right and wrong about our education system. Is that all right? Is that okay? So you can make your own decision about how I am about that. Way back, I am old. Those are the lyrics of a song which I first heard when I was about 17 or 18 and have stayed with me almost every day. My irritation is with myself in that I wasn't able to make the changes that I thought I was going to be able to make when I became a teacher, and that has continued throughout. So let's move on then. It's pretty dark up here. Now you can't see without my glasses, but we'll crack on. Yes, so the hashtag, the screen is new this year. Who uses Twitter? Wave hand. Excellent, that's fantastic. Then you will know then that one of the perils of Twitter for people who are speakers, who are so grand that they stand in front of people and pontificate and say stuff, is that on the positive side about Twitter is that you are able to record the highlights, the 140 characters of what that person is saying, and already I've said much more than 140 characters. And we can then share that with those poor unfortunates who couldn't come, who chose not to come, who didn't know, not just in our country, but beyond across the world. So it means that our conference can extend right across the world, which is great. But it can also be used for you lot to start chatting about the numpty down the front. Looks a bit like a Chuckle Brother. No, it's more like Richard Hammond. More like the idiot child of Johnny Cash and Eartha Kitt. I had boyish good looks until quite recently, but now I've taken on that kind of Channel 4 look of that incredible aging child, age 12, which is a little unfortunate. So, back to the tweets. What I've done is that all of the text that you see in this presentation is less than 140 characters. Thereby, I am controlling what it is that you tweet. Thank you. So. So, there are three sections to what it is that I'm going to be talking about. The first is teaching without technology. I started teaching in '84. The next section that we will look at will be about teaching with technology and very much reflects the technology that is being used effectively within our region, actually, from where I teach. All of the footage that you see is from our region. And then the third part is the challenges that face the individual teachers, the challenges that face us, and also the widening teaching education profession. So I'll start by saying, actually, I didn't think that I knew what I wanted to do. I was rubbish at school, actually. I didn't see any connection. How many people are trainee teachers here? All right, so perhaps one of the interviews you will be asked, one of the interview questions you'll be asked is, who was a teacher that inspired you? And you're supposed to talk about that. None of them inspired me whatsoever. I liked a couple of them, but I really didn't understand it. And that extended through to higher education too. But I can say that eventually, when I ended up at what was Teesside Poly and is now the awesome place that is the University of Teesside, I met tutors that truly did inspire me, and that is how I ended up being a teacher. But I was going to be a potter. The one thing that I was any good at, this isn't entirely true, I was good at English, but English doesn't count because it's not a proper subject. But what I could do was, me and another lad, Lee Scott, was we knew how to make the wheel, and it is partly because you could make wheelies. We're streaming this, right? Okay, so we have a visual aid for that. And the interesting bit about that is that in those days, you were supposed to choose something for life, and we hear constantly now that the young people in our lives that we're supposed to be preparing need to understand that they will have many career changes through their lives. So, there we go. That would be me just when I started. That is preparation. Who is a teacher in here? Is there anybody who is a teacher? This here is the green book. That is what you did all of your planning in. This is pre-national curriculum. And because I did my teaching practice in this challenging school. It's a fantastic school, and it's doing very well now. If I say that, when I went there on teaching practice, there was an extreme case of violence towards a member of staff, and I was required to do cover while they went to sort out the other things. Then that gives you some sense of what kind of school it was. The kids were all, some of them were glue sniffers, solvent abusers, car thieves, and there is something which is very upsetting, really, for people of my age, which is that we started in Thatcher's Britain with kids that were coming from first, second, and even third generation unemployment. And we're right back where we started, and that's partly where all of my angst and anger is coming from, I think. So what I did was that I went down to Dixon's and I bought a tape recorder because I'd like to talk a little bit about literacy and literacies and digital literacy and what I think about digital literacy. And I bought a tape recorder because that then allowed me then to get the kids to be able to reproduce what they understand. Many of them couldn't write very well by any standard. And that they were able to then have a voice through the tape recorder. And I would also take my 35mm camera in. The downside of that technology was we were always waiting 2 weeks for the pictures to come back again for us to be able to use those. And I had a Brother typewriter that I bought for £5, and I made worksheets. That was the only way I was going to make differentiated worksheets, was for me to write these things, picking and poking. What transformed my teaching was when we moved into Apple Macs and I managed to get access to an Apple Mac. And the best thing that happened in terms of technology, as far as I can see, particularly in terms of literacy, was desktop publishing, because it allowed the kids to do neat work and they were able to move beyond the ugliness of the handwriting. There were spell checkers in there were thesauruses in there, and what great fun we had with that too. So that then was sort of how I started my teaching. So what resources did we use? Are we going to say then that you need to be able to? See, the thing that's concerning me a little bit is that we seem to be constantly looking for the piece of technology which is going to make teaching and learning effective. And it might be the iPad 1, it might be the iPad 2, it might be the iTouch, it might be that we're going to be getting some Nintendo games things going on, and it might be about Braille. And we have this endless thing of, if only we could get to that bit of technology, then that would mean that we'd be able to do our working effectively, and we will be good at our jobs. But that then implies then that any of us who were teachers before that must have been rubbish. And I was rubbish a lot of the time. But sometimes I was quite good. So what we need to do now is I need to have a class so that I can demonstrate. At totally random, I'm going to pick those 3 people there. Class of PELC 12, could you please go a little round of applause for that? We've got Pat, Martin, Lynn. They're going to take their seats. We've positioned the chairs so you can still see the screen, so that when you're looking embarrassed and don't know any answers, it'll be all nice and big and you'll be able to see that. So what we could say is one of the things that I used, reaching down here, I would go into the Toon down Newcastle and I would go into the travel agents and take something around 90 to 120 brochures off the shelves. And that would then mean that we could turn to our class. I've already spotted the SWAT, so I've given them to him. I don't want any references to the good, the bad, and the ugly. You didn't know I meant you. I was a great teacher. God wasted a good bum when he put teeth in that. You don't know which one I was talking to? It's my presentation, you just have to be quiet, no heckling. Money presenter. So why would we be using the holiday brochures? Well, let's just ask a question. What do you look for in a holiday, little missy?
Value.
Value. That's a great answer. Try again.
Sunshine.
Sunshine. See.
Somewhere quiet.
Somewhere quiet. Let's see if the 3 of them can work collaboratively to find a holiday in there which is sort of a bit quiet, has a bit of sunshine. Is value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, you've all got sort of £500 each. So that we set off our kids in the class reading for information. They need to be critical readers. They soon learn that, in fact, every picture has got blue sky and blue swimming pools, and there's nobody in any of the pictures because all the resorts are empty, apart from a couple of beautiful people. What is it that I can do with this? Well, what I used to do was that it allowed the kids to choose, and they liked that. They were interested. It was about being relevant. They wanted to go abroad. There were lots of pictures of women in bikinis and men in Speedos, so there was something for everyone. And we would be cutting out, and we'd be making our brochures. And what they would do is they would choose. We'd have a bit of maths. We'd have to work out how we could go, what month we'd be able to go in. And then they could write postcards. Remember postcards? Which is sort of big tweets. And then they could also write reviews of their holidays. And then we could have our fiction writing where something bad would happen. Somebody would drown. Somebody would lose their handbag. Or there might be a robbery. There might be all of those kinds of things. Have you chosen your holiday? Have I got a spokesman, Pat? We've got it there. How much does it cost?
$495 if we go into
495. What a good lad, eh? Did you enjoy that task? A little round of applause. And so what we can then see is that our kids will work together with enthusiasm, without any technology. So are we saying then that it's possible to be an effective teacher without technology? Well, yes, we will, because I was that teacher, all right? So that's what we're doing. And there's no denying, though, that if I was to do that now in my class, we could then move into TripAdvisor, we could use the online stuff. We will actually visit a little bit about filtering in schools, because it's quite difficult to see a holiday website in a school if the school has blanket blocked anything to do with selling and buying. But if we look at TripAdvisor, TripAdvisor is really a very interesting thing, and you'll have heard in the news about how people are reviewing hotels and destinations and perhaps being less than honest. And I did a little bit of digging, and there's some very interesting reviews of places that we see on TripAdvisor. And what my beautiful class here have to do is they have to work out whether those are indicative of that place, whether they're truthful or not. So we have our critical literacy happening again. They need to be discerning readers, and that is really very nice. Class, you were absolutely fantastic at that. Class is over for that moment. And if we were doing it now, then we would be able to send tweets from our holiday. We would be able to make Facebook pages for the companies, Facebook pages for the tour rep, Facebook pages for the family. We can pretend to be each of those different people. We can develop empathy skills. We can do non-chronological writing. It's all hoody-doody. And we can even write different newspaper versions of what's happening, so we can compare the tabloids to the broadsheets and so on. Is that all right, then? Oh, paper forward. We've got another task for them. Those of you who've seen me speak before will have seen me do this. This is something else that I used to do a lot, and I've kind of resurrected it because there's a whole generation of people who haven't seen it. So my beautiful children here, my lovely, lovely class who are growing on me, need your pieces of paper. Pat, could you give the paper out, please? I've already spotted who can be trusted with resources. You don't need your holiday brochures now. That lesson's over. So I do this actually, do you know what? I know that I've got an hour's worth of stuff and I've overrun, so we're going to have to make a decision about this already, but I'm having a nice time. So, it's a listening exercise, and what I can usually do with the class is work out you won't be able to do it, you will do it really quickly, and you'll be struggling just a little bit. That's sort of the way that it would go in a class. Are you going to listen? Are we off? Hold your pages, portrait, fold them in half. Once you fold them in half, line up the corners. When you've lined up the corners, fold it in half again. You should have a piece of paper that looks like this. Fold it in half again. Once you've folded it in half like that, make sure all those creases are nice and straight. It's easy for you because you've got desks. Oh, wait. And then what you do is that you fold it out so you can see you've made like a little tent. When you've made a little tent, you're going to tear carefully halfway down. And then we open it out. What we've done is that we've made a kind of little mask. And so we've got the smiley little face thing going on here. We fold it top to bottom, and we push it together. See, we've got this little mouth thing that's going on. And then once we've done that, what you've actually done, just pull it together, it's not easy for me standing up, is that you've made a 6-page booklet that has no staples. My book looks like this. Children, hold up your book when you've done it well. Sir, can I have another piece of paper? What is great about this, then, is that we can do instruction writing. The reluctant writers, what we've just seen in the previous speakers, is they can tell jokes, they can tell stories. We can use it with sixth formers for reducing Macbeth down to 6 pages. It's an absolutely fantastic resource. And what I've done is I've put that on YouTube. We weren't able to do that then. I wonder what's going to come up next. Oh, yes. So we can say, actually, that teaching is a little bit like weighing giraffes when you don't have a giraffe scale. So we can turn to our class and say, have you any idea how we could weigh a baby giraffe if you haven't got giraffe scales? And I will just do as we used to do in class. Yes. So the issue is actually that our kids can't necessarily think of things at the time that we ask them. This is one of the things that concerns me very much about schools, and we will see this as I move through, is how did we end up building schools for the future and still saying you come at 9 and you go at 4 and you're going to do it in little rooms? It makes no sense whatsoever, because my poor Mark here is going to be able to think of a really cracking idea which he could put on a blog later on. Well, perhaps teaching is very much like this. Then what we have to do is make the best of the tools that we've got. That's how you weigh a baby giraffe. You make sure you know how much you weigh, and then you can move on. So, now then, let's see where this is going. Mark, can you juggle? No? Can you juggle, Pat? Let's have Pat. Shall we have Pat? We've been picking on Mark a little bit. Pat, would you like to stand up and come over here? I don't know why you think taking the coat off was going to help you. Pat, those are your balls. These are my balls.
Why are you bigger than mine?
So, the way that, so we're going to take this as a motif for when the teacher knows something that they need to teach the kids, and the kids don't know it at all. So how do you teach stuff that you don't know, they don't know at all? Well, typically what we'd be saying is it would be something like this. So there you go, Pat, off you go. Would it help if Mark read it to you?
Yeah, go on.
So Mark's going to, you've got a microphone here, Mark, if you want. You want to just use the microphone? No rush, in your own time.
Okay. Start with 2 balls in one hand, 1 and 3. In this case, the right hand, but if you are a lefty, use your left hand.
Don't let me quit you off. I'm going to read these over here while you're doing it.
And 1 ball, 2, in the other. Start by throwing the ball in... I'm trying to figure this out
So
myself.
what we can say then is, all right, you're useless. I was a good teacher. Yes, the important part of juggling is learning the drop. Once you've mastered the drop, everything else moves on a little bit. So what we could say then is that we'll move on and say we'll put diagrams in there. Is that any more helpful? I'm guessing no. So what you really need is for the teacher to show you. This is the really crappy bit where I remember I can't juggle. All right, so this is how you do it, Pat. Rest of the class, pay attention. You take 1 ball, you put it in your right hand. Do you think you can be able to get all this? And you throw it in an arc. It's hard with them lights. So it goes past your nose and lands in that hand. And perhaps what we need to do is just to throw it back again so it lands in that hand. And when we feel really comfortable with that throwing in an arc past our nose, easy for me, I've got a big nose, then what we can do is we can introduce our second ball. Get your second ball out, son. And this one, we're going to throw one up in the air, and then just as it's at the top, we're going to throw the other one. We're going to catch it. All right? And then the next bit is we're going to count to 4, which is, it's not easy with them lights. Thank you. Please clap. Right, so, Pat, you may keep the balls, and you may sit down. What we could have done is that we could have videoed that, and I could have asked my class, unlike our classes in schools, we could have said, get your mobiles out and video this difficult thing, because then you'll be able to practice it and learn it when you're at home. Does that make sense? So we can say, actually, although we're looking at old technology, we can see why new technology would be useful. So that would take us through to the learning platform. A learning platform is a fantastic place for teachers to put resources, for kids to put resources. What I like about a learning platform, now I should also say, I missed out in my introduction about myself, which I thought was quite grand, is that I was originally appointed at Northern Grid to be the learning platform adoption person. So I do know stuff about learning platforms. We have a procurement framework, and I've worked very closely with learning platform providers and with schools to embed the learning platform. A learning platform, by my definition, is an online repository which is secure, and is also a suite of communication tools, which are then provided by the learning platform company. And that is more or less what you get, which is great if that stuff all kind of fits together and is exactly what you want. However, what we find is that learning platforms are a little bit like kitchens, in that one size doesn't fit all. Look at the face of the big dog. Sick as a chip. Because In the same way that some of us are ready, steady, ping, the microwave is all that we need, other people need to be getting ourselves over there and doing the whole stirring and Jamie Oliver thing and all of that. See how I know about cooking? And where we get to is that we're actually learning platform providers continue to say, this is the suite of products that we're allowing you to use, when in fact, and it kind of hurts me a little bit, I'm at a stage where, and all the evidence suggests, that we are moving away from proprietary learning platforms and moving to the cloud, capital T, capital C, which would be this notional idea where you would have your own bespoke tools that you had selected, which fit the needs of your learners and allowed you to teach effectively. And it will be interesting how that turns out. And I'm actually eating a little bit of humble pie because I remember Steve and James Clay debating, is the VLE dead 2 years ago? And I said, absolutely not. But as of about a month ago, I'm starting to think that unless our learning platform providers become extremely adaptable and flexible, then their time may indeed be just a little bit numbered, which isn't something that I would wish on them. And so, having looked at technology, and we're hoping, I know which slide's coming up next, we're probably going to move into teachers who are embracing technology. That is footage from across the region where I work. It is great to see teachers adopting and using technology, and we can see there that there are some real benefits of technology, and to be able to Google it at your fingertips, it seems to make a lot of sense to me. That adds value to what it is that you're trying to do within your classroom. The challenge we have, though, is that this is Google Glass, which is the idea that you would have Google everywhere, and within that we would have VR, and we would also know which networks that people are on, so that you'd be able to look at people, and then you'd be able to say, oh, he's on Facebook, or he's on Twitter, there's his name. And that would take us to a really interesting place of how do you manage your classroom, and how do you block social media in your school, and how do you filter social media? How do you make sure that all of our kids do exactly what we say at the time we want them to do it, and don't go cheating by having this kind of VR new dimension to our world? And we will talk about these teachers a little later. Because within that, and he is here, where are you, Mr. Bunce? There he is, look, people, wave your hand again so you can all see him. That is Steve Bunce, Freudian, all I can say. Dr. Steve Bunce, he's doing a workshop here, when is it? Tomorrow? You thinking about preparing it tonight? What is interesting about Steve Bunce, and I never thought that was a sentence I was going to say, is that he is the great adopter of technology. I've seen him do many, many workshops. I've delivered courses with him, and it is all about games, and it's all about virtual pets, and it's all about really, really exciting technology. But his kind of key thing that he's going on and on and on and on and on about it is knitting. He sees knitting as being key in helping kids to understand a lot of things, but specifically about code. And we know that coding is something that the government, and we will talk about the government a little later. And what I think is really interesting about Steve is that on the one hand, he has that adoption and the embracing and the inquisitive eye of, I wonder how that technology can help me, but equally so to say, actually, it's as much about knitting needles as it is about holiday brochures, as it is about folding pieces of paper. It's about appropriate activities to nurture our children, and has nothing to do with whether it's got a plug on or not. And so when we're thinking about how we control kids, how we manage the classroom, I came to the conclusion many years ago, that's my dog, that kids are like dogs. Is that they want consistency. They want the same rule day in, day out, and then they're comfortable with that. My dog knows that it can't go on the sofa, and it's very happy with that. It doesn't rue and complain every day, I want to go on the sofa. It knows I don't go on the sofa. Where it gets confused is if somebody lets him on the sofa. If one teacher lets the child on the sofa, then for the next teacher who comes in the room, we're all confused and we're saying, well, Mr. Finch says that we can pack up early on a Friday. We're actually breaking those rules around. So if Mr. Finch says you can do this on the computers, on the ed tech devices, but another teacher says that we can't, our kids are confused and there is no consistency of delivery. So what we need then is that instead of having this dog leash thing that we have at the moment, which is social media policies of banning Facebook and saying you can only go where I want you to go on the great wide interweb, and you can only work in these ways, we need kids to take on and own that lead themselves. And so I've got a lovely picture of a dog that's got its control of its own lead, and that motif is really what we're looking at for our children. So, what does that say? But what we need then, if we want schools to move forward and to adopt social media, if we want them to be able to use it in the way that Deputy Mitchell was demonstrating, how we can do that in our classroom, then what we need is a strong pastoral system. There is no point people saying that it is the domain of the IT teacher. It's the domain of that teacher over there. We need to make sure that when it comes to parent evening, we tell our parents, he took somebody else's logon details, and that is the equivalent of punching him. He has taken his identity and he has misused it. That is serious stuff. We need a consistency of delivery, and the only way that we're going to be able to do that is via those tweets. I'll give you time to tweet those, shall I? And it's not just the kids then that don't know how to behave online. Documentally, who some of you will know, Christian Payne, is most definitely a leading light in terms of social media, and he posted this a few months ago. It's an absolutely fantastic use of Instagram, and it's somebody has posted there and they've said, boom, boom, I've just bought myself a house, great excitement, picture of my new house keys. Somebody else replies with, oh, I wish I could buy my own house, and documentally says, boom, I've just copied your house keys. Now, if adults don't know how to behave online, then what chance the children? And that is a core message for us, is that we need to model appropriate behaviour, but we've got as much to do with teaching the adults ourselves how to behave as it is about working with our children. And so, we turn to the challenges to teachers and the challenges to the teaching profession.
Monday morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to like me. Coming Tuesday, I feel better. Even my old man looks good. Wednesday just don't go. Thursday goes too slow. I've got Friday on my mind.
So the challenges that we have is the disillusioned teacher, and for the reasons that we'll look through, and how do we either illusion them, how do we get back that creativity, how do we get that enthusiasm, or how do we make the changes elsewhere? We have a government that is consistently, and we see it reported in the press consistently, throwing our curriculum back to a place where we don't want it to be. And what I don't understand is how did we get to a place where we allowed them to make the decisions about effective teaching and learning? It is not good enough that we get education ministers who say, well, I went to school for a while, therefore, ergo, I know all about running schools and teaching and learning. On that basis, as I have been to hospital for that little thing that I had that was weeping, that must surely make me a brain surgeon in some sense. Is that not the same thing? I hope you're all tweeting nice things about me. I can't see what's going on. Watch for the nervous cough.
Our top story, the new rules which will allow heads of schools in England to sack bad teachers much more quickly.
The measures come into force in September and mean the process could take a term rather than a year. Teaching unions have condemned the changes as draconian and unnecessary.
Joining us now is the Education Secretary, Michael Gove. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Could you just take us through this process? So it could be as short as a term. That's a very short space of time. Can you sort of take us through that, how it would work chronologically?
Yes, in the first stage of this process, there'd be a warning, which would be given, an interview with the teacher. Then there'd be a process of observation, then another warning, then another process of observation. And then at the end of that, if the teacher was still underperforming and it was clear that all the measures that could help that teacher do a better job hadn't worked, then the head teacher would dismiss the
How will we know
teacher.
if your policy now is working?
Because standards will improve in schools.
Okay, but that's not necessarily that doesn't work, does it? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that the teacher is bad just because that class hasn't performed better.
Yes, it does.
Well, a lot of things could have happened to those children in that time.
Yes, but the teacher is the person who's responsible for them.
So any teacher now who's in a class that doesn't improve term on term, frankly, is in the firing line.
Yes.
Round of applause for Mr. Gove, I think, absolutely. What you need is Charlie as a keynote speaker. That's what you need. Charlie is consistently an excellent quizzer of people like Michael Gove. No wonder we're all depressed. When we are streaming this, possibly the most stupid and naive minister we could ever possibly have hoped for, destroying the education that we are trying to build up. And he should come to conferences like this and talk to real people who were trying to do the best for our kids, which in the end is what I started trying to do for other people's kids and what I tried to do for my kids and continue to do, because we want them to be the ones that change the world. I don't know, do I need to speak to that slide? Let's just rewind a little bit. Let's not edit this out. I was being perhaps a little... No, I wasn't. He's not the only one, is the best that I can say, because education ministers are like Doctor Who. They continue to come back, they look a bit different, but they continue to mess about with the education system to such an extent that everybody is demoralised and upset. So at the moment, we've got this lovely move towards academies, because who were these local authorities who were telling the schools what to do? That was a disgraceful thing to do. I'll give you 500 quid if in 5 years' time they don't turn around and say, who are all these bloody ed teachers doing whatever they want all the time? What we need is some kind of organisation to give them guidance and steerage. Let's invent some local authorities for a moment. I would have laughed at that bit if it had been me. So, and the other part of it is what is the point, us being creatives? I was an English teacher. This is an English exam, a GCSE English exam from last year. Pulled it off the interweb. I taught Lord of the Flies. If we've got an exam system that measures our ability on 45 minutes about writing about the book that I taught to them for about a term, and I did all this interesting stuff about living on an island, about interactions, and about what your panicking thoughts would be, and how would you feel if there were wild animals there, and how would you feel if there was a dead body. But the questions that we ask then is who is your chosen character? Tell me what they say and do, and what are the methods that Golding uses to present this to the teacher? How could that possibly measure, in any real sense, the enthusiasm, the interaction, all of the stuff that David was talking about, and Julie? How could that possibly measure the ability of our kids in terms of critical literacies or anything else? And so I looked a bit further on the web, and I was looking for teachers who share resources, and I found this. And if the person is here, then I do apologise, because I'm going to be just a little bit unkind about this. This is all about Venn diagrams. So this has been put up to share with other teachers and with the kids. Peculiar use of fonts. There's a squiggle there I don't understand. We've got students in a particular class, students who speak Spanish, students who speak French. Absolutely interesting stuff. And so the questions will be, use this information to tell me the students who speak Spanish, French, both Spanish and French, neither Spanish or French, Spanish but not French, French but not Spanish. How many students in the class? Because that is riveting stuff. And the extension activity then takes us to... Here we go. I'll move in close so that I can read it. 35 members of a horticultural society were asked if they grew alpines, begonias, or cacti. The results showed that. So we have the questions. How many people did not grow any of these three types of plants? How many people grew both alpines and begonias? How many people grew cacti? D, who cares? There was an F word we could have put in there. So, This is perhaps a little better. We need our teachers to be creative. There's your tweet for you. We need them to be thinking the other way. If you need to teach Venn diagrams, and God knows I use them every day, then perhaps what we need to be doing is thinking about, let's give them something relevant. So I'm back to my class then. Sweet people here. Can you think of a character or a role in society that would have great power? Fictional or real? Quickly. Spider-Man, that's a great answer. Spider-Man's got a great power. And then we could come down here, knows if you've been naughty or nice. Your mum. Santa. And then we could then come down here and we could then say, wears a red suit. So we're already getting a bit of a pattern going on here. So let's see what would happen with our Venn diagram. Nobody expected the Spanish Inquisition. That is how we make education interesting. Let's just get down with the kids and talk about the people that they're interested in. I like how Santa has all of that stuff. There's a teacher, I'll not name them, there's a teacher that I follow on Twitter who seems to be doing lots of good stuff. She's a secondary teacher. And then bam, out of the blue, up comes this. I honestly think it's the new generation of heads that are killing creativity in schools with their low morale approach. In 140 characters. I despair when I see that. I despair that we've got teachers who are working their sweet little butts off and they believe that their leaders are undermining their morale. And we've got some people here. EdChat is one of the greatest things that you will see on Twitter, the weekly discussions. There was a discussion over in Ireland, and they spent almost an hour, as far as I could see, hours a week. How can we engage the technophobe? The member of staff in our school who is frightened of technology. I know exactly how I would engage him, because my definition is a teacher who has stopped wanting to improve their craft. They're not scared of it. They are saying, actually, I know all I need to know about teaching and learning, and I don't need to improve, and I don't need to try something new. The technophobes are the people who have given in. It's not about age, it's not about gender. What we have is that regardless of whatever technology that we bring in, we find that people will, and it can be ourselves, it is me often, are blinkered, and we struggle to see how we can use that in an innovative way. We teach the same way as we've always done with new technology. And that puts us in a very vulnerable position. And then the next bit, which is a bit of a concern to me, is how do we nurture these teachers? How do we move them forward? Well, I would suggest that our digital divide extends to our teachers, which is that we have a language which alienates them. There is a great teacher in our area who works with primary schools. You actually saw his kids. They're on Twitter, and they're year 3, tiny little kids, and he does great stuff with manga, and he does about deconstructing fairy tales, and he does all this stuff about critical literacies. And I saw on Twitter that he was looking despondent and sounding despondent. I said, what's the matter? He sent me a private message that says, it's just hard when my Brer Rabbit critical literacy project explores racial prejudice is described as that puppet thing by the head teacher. What possible chance has he got? On the other hand, why did he call it all that stuff in the first place? I suspect that the language is a barrier to our colleagues. And one of the things is that because we will give them new technology, we will give ourselves new technology. It's not always us and them. It can be me too. It can be us too. Is that we see a new piece of technology and we say, I wonder if I can do that thing that I used to do with the old thing.
Sag mal, Papa, habe ich dich noch gar nicht gefragt. Wie kommst du denn eigentlich mit dem neuen iPad zurecht, was wir dir zum Geburtstag geschenkt haben?
Gut.
Mit den ganzen Apps kommst du klar?
Was denn für Apps? Geh mal bitte einen Schritt zur Seite. So. Was ist?
Give them new technology, and I'll use it in exactly the same way as I use my old technology. And the greatest example of that was interactive whiteboards. Spend £1,500, £2,000, and they'll be just drawing us. Pay attention! I'm drawing on the interactive whiteboard. Exactly the same teaching. One of my colleagues said, interactive whiteboard, the interactive bit is interact with the curriculum, not interact with the board. That's why it's called it. I thought that was quite a useful little motif there. So, what we can say is perhaps they should have waited till all the old people died. Do you need time to tweet that? And it's not about ed tech. It's not about e-learning. To my shame, my job title is e-learning officer, and I cringe. When people say, what do you do? I say, eat buffets. It's easier. Till the cuts. We don't tend to have the buffets now. I am mortified by that. So long as we keep calling it e-learning, we are alienating our colleagues. So long as we talk about digital literacies, we're alienating our colleagues. Digital literacies is part of literacy. It's about being critical. It's about being discerning. It's about being able to decode. It's all of that stuff. It's not about putting posh words together to make ourselves sound clever. Little hush. I did say to Steve, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be in entirely the right place to do this session or entirely the wrong place, given that almost all of the workshops that are on here has the word digital in there somewhere. What we need is creative, empathetic teachers. We want ones that want the best for their kids, year in, year out, class in, class out. And here's one.
I'm Aaron Sams, and I teach science here at Woodland Park High School. My ultimate goal, I guess, as a teacher is to help students become learners who can learn for themselves and by themselves. One of the problems that I was guilty of, even prior to flipping my classroom around, was the classroom was centered around me. I told them exactly what to learn, how to learn it, what assignments to do to learn it, and when to learn it, and how to prove to me that they learned it. I don't do that anymore. We changed the place in which content is delivered. Instead of standing in front of a class and delivering, here's how you do this type of problem, here's how this works, I deliver that direct instruction now asynchronously at home through these videos that we make with Camtasia Studio.
Times till whole.
Oh, we didn't do that last time.
The last step, they were already whole numbers. We had 1, 1, and 4.
Yeah.
Here we don't have a whole number. So here's a few little tricks when you need to multiply by whole numbers. If one of your numbers ends in 0.5, you're going to multiply by 2.
Or something 0.5 times it by 2.
Right.
Okay, write this down, guys.
Yes. If something ends in 0.3 or 0.33 or 0.66, you multiply by 3.
And when the kids come to class, they don't show up to learn new stuff. They show up to apply the things that they learned at home and to ask me questions about the things they learned at home. So now they can have my lesson, if you will, what I would normally have stood up and lectured to them in class with some added features. They get that at home. And then what they were expected to do for homework is now what they do in my class. Life is different for me because I no longer am the guy who stands up in the front of the classroom and just yaks at a student for an hour or however long the class is. Now I walk around the class and I help kids. I'm a tutor, I'm a guide, I'm the putter outer of fires, whatever it happens to be in my crazy chemistry class. I walk around and do that. I don't stand up front and teach under the kind of the traditional model. I'm Aaron Sams. I'm a teacher. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. And I love Camtasia Studio.
What a great guy. Flipping his classroom. And I'm absolutely delighted for him. I was told that it's rude to say but. And here's the thing. He is a fantastic teacher. He is passionate. He cares. He is creative. It's all going fizz bang wallop. I saw some kids sitting on the worktops. That is great. And I definitely, absolutely, I've been advocating for ages, done it myself. Why not record the things so the kids can watch it at home? Absolutely. Makes all the sense. Why do we think that between 9 and 10 they're going to be doing maths, and when I explain it to them, they're not going to be kind of distracted by hamster dying, girlfriend leaving them, and all that sort of stuff? Of course, put the stuff on there. But give it 5 years, and they'll be saying, hey, you know, instead of teaching the kids via iPod type things, wouldn't it be great if the teacher explained it to them in the classroom face to face? How wacky would that be? So the thing that I really take from that is there's a guy who is proud of what he's doing and is doing the best that he can for his kids. And that is absolutely fantastic. And I don't think Michael Gove would understand that at all. But we don't help if we're going to continue to be talking about digital literacy and e-learning. I see the rolls of eyes myself when I'm going into schools, when I'm working with colleagues, when I'm delivering workshops. If we come out with this posh stuff, then inevitably we get all kinds of negative responses. People either feel insecure or they feel angry and they feel hurt and all of those kinds of things. One of the best things, no, the best thing, and if you've not been involved in it, it looks like most of you have, has got to be the online learning community. When I started teaching in '84, I was an English drama and dance teacher. And I was Billy No Mates. There were 9 other English teachers on the corridor. The only time I saw them teach was if I ran next door to get some chalk. The only time I met other English teachers was perhaps on one year I was allowed to go on a course. You can't go on a course this year, Simon, you went on a course last year. That was the only time I met any. But the drama teachers, because we were the downtrodden, it was disgraceful what I had to do when I started, because kids would be in the corner, they'd have glue and Tipp-Ex on the sleeves of the blazers, and they would be kind of in another zone, they'd be lighting up, they would be having sex kinds of things. There was a lot of hands down each other's trousers things, boys and girls mostly. There was all kinds of stuff going on, but once a month, I went to the Tyne Theatre, and there upstairs in a dark room, they had orange juice, they had wine, and they had peanuts, and they had crackers, and they had cheese, and they had French bread, and the drama teachers of Newcastle, LA, got together and shared ideas. You lot can do it every Friday night from your own house. It is absolutely fantastic that we have this collection, and it's not just within your own local authority, it's within our country. You saw me e-wigging in over on Ireland, and we have people coming in from the States and from Australia and from New Zealand and foreign-speaking countries as well. It is absolutely amazing. And then we see teachers reflecting through their blogs. If a teacher's not blogging, what's wrong with them? What have they got to hide? Those are the great sides of the technology, and what we can do now that we couldn't do before is communicate. So, what we need to do is have classes full of surprise and drama. That is what we need to be aspiring to in our classrooms. I found this, I thought this was a really useful bit of a story. Raise the status of teachers in our schools. Many, many times I've been ashamed of being a teacher. Usually on my holidays, and I don't want to talk about when I'm on holidays. So mostly, in my younger days, I would say I was a hairdresser, because you got two responses. I hated my teachers, or you get long holidays. What was the point? Why would I come out there? The great things that teachers do are kept a secret. We know what they do. You're all here in this room. We've got the great hope for the future of our trainee teachers. We've got the people who have come here because they want to better themselves. They want to learn more about the process of teaching. They're here for food for their mind. They've come to this spa that is PELeCON. But, and this is where I'm kind of really sticking my neck out. I have paid my union dues since 1984, so I'm nigh on 30 years. I am a union member. I am, with any definition, a socialist. I believe in my union, and I believe in looking after each other. I understand all of that. What I also understand is that if we go marching because our pensions are going to be a bit less, and if we go marching because our terms are going to be a bit longer, then we will have no public sympathy whatsoever. What we should be marching about, what we should be getting angry about, is how we have a bloke who knows nothing, who was described in the House of Commons as a pipsqueak, is ruining our education. What we need to do is we need to get up and we need to stand. We need to stand for what we stand for. We need to say it's all about passion. It's all about creativity. And it's all about making sure that we do the best that we can do for our kids, and we share that beyond the society, beyond so that everybody knows what it is that we're doing, and that does make me angry. That was how we started with my slide, is that we're too introspective in saying, well, what about my pension? What about my working conditions? Well, what we should really be doing is marching with pickets in our hands, the big banners saying, we are the experts, we are the people who know how to make the change. We are the people who will make tomorrow's grown-ups, who will save our economy, who will enrich our society. And so it is payback time. It is important that we do that. And I need you to show me that you're with me. So, I need my class to stand up. And we're going to see if they can help us. I'm going to say something better change, and they're going to bellow it behind me so that my ears flat. I'm going to say something better change.
Something better change.
Yeah. I'll say it again. Something better change.
Something better change.
Oh, now we're going. So we'll choose this half of the room here. Something better change.
Something better change.
That's pathetic. Something better change. Something better change. Put your devices down. Keep your cameras up because we're going to have a little photographic moment for your scrapbook, okay? Put your devices down. In a moment, you're all going to stand up. And what I'd like you to do is to get your fist up and look angry. But you may not be happy about the fist thing. You may want to wave a hanky or an iPhone if you're a girl. Because it's sing-along a Sim-Fin time. You ready? You'll be pleased to know this is possibly the last slide. We need you to stand, ladies and gentlemen. Stand. Guys, cameras out. Raise your arms. Are you with me? Are you? Here we go.
Something better change.
Guys, we're singing. Something better change. Something better change. Let's see those fists up. Look at them. You look beautiful. Let's hear it, guys. Change, 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 change.
Change, 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 change.
He loves this song. Guess what the last word is?
Change.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to my class. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That was, well, astounding, wonderful, challenging. I think we're running out of time, but I'm going to open the floor up for maybe one or two questions to finish off with before we close.
If you dare.
If you dare, yes. Is there a question from anybody at all? I think you're probably all stunned into silence.